Welcome to all out here in our audience from all over the world. This is the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce presenting on how we're creating policy for sustainability in our underrepresented communities. And we're doing this today looking at ways of innovation and access to reach that sustainability. My name is Aziza Davis Goins, and I am the president and CEO for the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce. We've been a part of this organization with the CBCF now for almost 9 years. This will be our 9th year, as a matter of fact. And we're delighted to be here again, presenting and talking about how we're building sustainability, and hopeful that some of this information that we're sharing today will be helpful to those out in our audience. Today, our speakers, as you can see on the screen now, will be Mr. Louis Stewart, who is the former Chief Innovation Officer for the City of Sacramento. He will give a presentation and then will be the moderator for the rest of this conference. Presenter Jose Bodipo-Memba is a director for the Sustainable Communities Department for the Sacramento Municipal Utilities District that we refer to as SMUD. Presenter Tyrone Roderick Williams is the Deputy Director for the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, who we refer to as SHRA. Dr. Marceline Watson Durbiny is the Associate Vice President of Student Retention and Academic Success at California State University, Sacramento. And Dr. John Boyd is the CEO for Mental Health Services with Sutter Health. Those are the interesting people you'll be hearing from today, and we hope you enjoy this presentation. Thank you. Louis?
Thank you so much, Aziza. My name is Louis Stewart. I will be the moderator for today's session. You're going to hear some interesting topics from my fellow panelists. I'm going to actually start it off with a presentation talking about what we've done in Sacramento as a city to look at innovation, entrepreneurship, and really getting ready for the next economy here in Sacramento. I have been the Chief Innovation Officer in Sacramento for 3 years. I started back in 2017. The position was created under the prior mayor, in 2016. And when I stepped in 2017, Mayor Steinberg had me head the Mayor's Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And for the 3 years that we've been working on this, we've done some amazing things. And as Aziza mentioned, I will be transitioning out as of September 14th, moving back to the private sector, but always going to be a champion for Sacramento. And so I look forward to continuing this conversation with everybody post this presentation and working with everybody in the future. Next slide, please. The first thing that we did in Sacramento back in 2017 is actually something called the Sacramento Urban Technology Lab Framework. It focused around 7 verticals that you see here, and it was really meant to reframe the conversation and perception of Sacramento as the capital of the 5th largest global economy. A lot of people in Sacramento and beyond really thought of Sacramento as a pass-through city or just a government town. And it was important as a Chief Innovation Officer, in order to be successful, to really start championing and communicating that there was more possible in Sacramento when it came to innovation, when it came to the community and getting them ready for the next economy, and really communicating to industry that Sacramento was a place that they should actually look at if they were leaving other parts of the state or coming here from other parts of the country. As you see here, the 7 verticals are health, IT, and life science, Internet of Things and cybersecurity, mobility, food systems, clean tech and sustainability, and of course you have to have government policy and civic tech. Those are the foundational elements of what Sacramento is all about. Underneath the government policy and civic tech, what you see there is evidence-based policy, demonstration, and applied research. Those are the things that Sacramento, as a policy hub for California, should be foundational to anything that's actually done in the city. And really the state, because Sacramento actually has the potential to really set the conversation in a global economy, being the capital of California. And the last part of the Sacramento Urban Technology Lab framework was really thinking about the city as a living laboratory in order to demonstrate the viability of new innovations and new policy when it came to civic tech and how these things should actually roll out. So one of the things that we really championed for the first couple years that I was on board was thinking about autonomous cars and how Sacramento should be part of the conversation as far as setting standards for autonomous cars globally. Looking at what was happening from our partners coming over from China, looking at what was happening in other states, and how you can actually, and also talking to our partners in the EU, really explaining and getting Sacramento involved in the overall conversation about how to safely roll out autonomous cars nationwide and globally. So what we did is we intentionally opened up our streets. We had 3 things in mind. We wanted to make the cars that were coming to Sacramento very visible. So we always had a show route where we'd get the politicians in the car, we'd get the media out there to look at the cars, because this was, technology coming to Sacramento outside of the Bay Area, where everybody thought that that was the only place that could happen. We also made sure that we communicated what safety measures were being taken to get the cars on the road, so that we can actually overcome any fears that the public may have about self-driving cars. And then really accessibility. We wanted to communicate to everybody how accessible the technology was, and make it so that people, primarily children, understood what was needed to access the technology. And the overarching reason why we started really with mobility is because mobility is the key to the health and wealth of our citizens. And if we can get people to worry a little bit less about not having transportation and providing an alternate means of getting to work, getting to healthcare, getting kids to and from after school activities. In this case, what you see in the picture is my 16-year-old daughter taking her first ride in a self-driving car solo. And this was the company Zoox that we were trying to court to Sacramento because we actually had a different environment than what they're doing at their headquarters in San Francisco. And I thought it was important to expose my kids to this technology, because everything I did in this role was for my kids and kids that look like my kids. It's crucial to get kids and the citizens in underrepresented communities to understand that this is not fictional anymore. This technology is here, and have to have everybody understand what's necessary to program the cars, to operate the cars, how to operate around the cars. How do these robots interact with people crossing the street, riding bikes, going into neighborhoods with lots of trees. And it was crucial for that communication. One of the things that you saw as a vertical was Internet of Things and cybersecurity. And during the pandemic, when the pandemic first hit, what we found, as everybody's finding across the nation, is that there's a big hole in broadband access, especially in underserved and underrepresented communities. So Sacramento partnered with the state, California State Transportation Agency, Regional Transit, Sac Public Library, and a host of private sector partners to roll out what we call the Wi-Fi bus. And basically we pulled this partnership together. Next slide, please. We pulled this partnership together over a 5-week period, and it was a 60-day proof of concept. There was 10 buses, and they ran 7 days a week. During those 7 days, for that stretch, they made 120 stops a week. We actually had a nice calendar and locator. We used parks, we used churches, schools, community centers, wherever we can find partners to actually have a bus parked. Anybody that wanted to use the service, it was free. And it was primarily going to underrepresented neighborhoods. It took 5 weeks as opposed to 6 months to implement. It was a completely free 60-day partnership proof of concept. We had 1,600 users. The Wi-Fi bus app was developed by an industry partner that was part of the Mayor's Tech Council. And they stepped in within a couple of weeks and rolled out the SAC Wi-Fi bus app, which allowed people on or off Wi-Fi to track where the buses were so that they can actually meet up with it. We had speeds up to a gig, especially at the libraries. And now the system is actually being replicated in Maui, New York, and Louisville. You know, we think that especially now that school is going more virtual or almost all virtual, this is actually probably a third leg to the broadband access tool until cities can actually stand up and get stand-up Wi-Fi itself, or get Wi-Fi to its citizens using community and industry partners. If you have a mobile solution, such as we had with the SAC Wi-Fi bus, you can actually move it around in a city, county, especially in rural areas, to get access until the permanent access is available. One of the biggest things that we found with this solution for the communities we're trying to serve is the need for a coordinated communication and outreach strategy. We ran into, early on, we ran into some challenges because the word was to stay at home. And we were rolling these buses out into communities that were hearing a message, stay at home, don't go outside, don't congregate. And we were telling everybody, go to the Wi-Fi bus, do your homework, look for a job, do your work. And it was a challenge to get folks out there. But like I said, now that everybody's going virtual, and you see these images of students going out, waiting in front of, to use the Wi-Fi in front of fast food restaurants and such, this is one of those solutions that should be considered. The CARES Act, as everybody's familiar with, rolled out earlier this year. Sacramento was fortunate to be one of those cities that received CARES Act dollars, $89 million. The way that the city decided to work through the allocation of these funds was to dedicate $10 million to workforce development. Some of the recipients of those dollars, of those 10 million that were peeled off, were the California Mobility Center, which you'll hear from my colleague, Jose. General Assembly, another coding tech company that's coming to do some work with our citizens, and the Collective Six, which is a group that we brought together intentionally to serve the Black and Brown community. The Collective Six is 6 organizations that we brought together to do digital workforce development. They consist of the Greater Sacramento Urban League, CompTIA, Creator X, Intelligentsia, Square Root Academy, and Code for Hood. These 6 will be reaching out into the community to help the community understand, one, what it takes to get into a tech forward industry, so that you can actually program the KiwiBot that you see on the screen, so that you can actually use and get into the cybersecurity arena, whether it be on the technical side or whether you just wanted to be on the admin side where you're just taking care of systems. And also providing training geared towards minority women through Intelligentsia. Square Root Academy is a step down from that, where you're actually working with school-age kids to teach them coding and teach them a few other skills so that they can step up into a CompTIA training. Code for Hood, same exact thing. And Creator X was the little bit different part of this collective. Creator X is actually working with Mr. Sean Sullivan, that some of you may have heard of before. If you guys have ever seen Monster Inc., the monster Sully is actually based off of Sean Sullivan. He is connected to the film and animation industry, and he wanted to work with the city to bring underserved youth into the animation and film world. And so we thought that this particular combination of groups would actually make it possible for there to be an intersection from the creative to the technical, and get kids in and out of these different applications. But not only kids, young adults, and workers in transition because of the pandemic. I believe that actually wraps my particular time, and I want to make sure that as we move through the rest of this presentation, that you guys listen closely to what my colleagues are going to be speaking about. You're going to hear everything from the energy sector with Jose Bodipo Memba. You hear about the housing sector with Tyrone Roderick Williams. You'll hear from Dr. Marceline Watson Durbini about the educational sector, and Dr. John Boyd about mental health. You know, these four topics are really crucial these day and age here when you're starting to talk about innovation and sustainability and how to drive policy, especially from a place like Sacramento. So I am grateful to Aziza for letting me be part of the Prosper delegation for the second year. And I, you know, like I said, as I transition, I hope I can participate in Prosper again in my new role, new capacity, and continue to work with these great people that you're about to hear from. With that, I'm actually going to turn it over to my brother, Jose Bodipo Memba, and he's going to talk to you about the Sacramento Municipal Utility District and what they are doing to bring innovation and sustainability in Sacramento. Quick introduction for Jose. Jose is the Director of Sustainable Communities for the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. The Sustainable Communities Program aim is to bring environmental equity and economic vitality to all communities in SPUD service area through partnership and alignment. Jose has 18 years of environmental and urban planning experience throughout California, covering a range of projects and community types. Mr. Bodipo Memba is active in the community and serves as a chair of the ULI Sacramento District Council, a member of the Center for Fathers and Families Board, and past chair for the Sacramento Planning and Design Commission and Next Move Sacramento. Let's put it this way, he's doing a lot. But right now, let's go ahead and turn it over to him. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Louis, and thank you for your leadership. I can honestly say I'm standing on your shoulders in terms of the foundation you created by bringing the Center of Innovation to Sacramento. We're looking forward to partnering with you in your new role, and thank you for all the great work. We know the buses particularly were a great benefit to a number of our partners. Thanks again to the Black Chamber for allowing SMUD, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, to be a partner. And as we talked about, you can see in the slide here, the presentation is really focused on taking the sustainable communities' needs and aligning them with innovation. We've identified sustainable communities as a four-pillared set of categories that we believe if we meet, that every community will really have the highest quality of life possible. So you can see in the graphics, social well-being, access to a healthy environment, access to a prosperous economy locally, and access to mobility, as Louis talked about before, are things that we're trying to drive through and drive forward through partnership. And so I'm really happy to say that we've been partnering with everybody you're going to hear from today and looking forward to expanding that list. So as Louis mentioned before, and as we all know, 2020 has been a very unique and difficult year for everyone. And while our mission overall has been about trying to ensure that all of our customers within our electric utility service area have the best access to a high quality of life, we had goals for this year as a second year program of rolling out Sustainable Communities Initiative. But as COVID hit, those goals had to be realigned and had to really match what existing needs were, because there were emergencies that had to be addressed right away, that if we didn't address those, members of our community were going to be the ones that were going to be facing the most disparity in the process. And as we've seen in Sacramento, the impetus for this conversation was the existing disparity that was hit during the economic downturn about 10 years ago. We've been trying to close that gap. So what we really tried to focus on is really how do we serve our underserved communities, particularly our Black and brown communities in Sacramento, small businesses and nonprofits who were hit the hardest and were forced to make decisions about opening or closing their doors, and how we make sure that the funding streams that are available are really focused on those groups that are often left out. And so we really had to take a role as a convener and looking at how we can gather the information we have and better meet the needs of our customers, whether they be commercial or residential. In that process, we had to make sure that we could balance those needs with some of the risks that we were facing. As you can imagine, when folks are losing jobs, when businesses are closing, they can't pay their electricity bill. They can't necessarily do what they've normally done as stewards. So one of the things I'm proud that SMUD has done is we've made sure throughout this year, we are not charging any late fees. In fact, we're not turning off anyone's electricity throughout the rest of 2020 because we want to make sure that folks can contribute. But that also made it possible for us to be very discriminating in the types of programs and alignment that we were focused on. So the first thing that we had to address is that here's a list of a number of our partners in the different sectors in which they work with. All these partnerships are very unique because they're multi-year partnerships. You'll see here the City of Sacramento and Lewis's group is one of those organizations. And so we really try to be intentional to make sure that we could have a real imprint in communities of need. But we also wanted to make sure during this downturn and during this pandemic and the associated social impacts that we've faced over the last 6 or 7 months, what were the specific needs that we're calling out from the community, from the nonprofit sector, and from the folks that they serve. So we did some surveys with these organizations, and the next slide shows what some of our partners shared were their primary needs. Financial support being a specific need for our nonprofit support partners. We also saw a heightened need in tech support. As we're doing this on Zoom right now, we were not necessarily positioned, particularly in the nonprofit space, to make that transition effectively. We also found that discounts on the utility side and staff support was something that was really a high level need from our nonprofit partners. Additionally, they reached out to their customers, to the communities the most at need in our Sacramento region, and identified the basics were really at the core of the ask. Water, shelter, food, transportation, things of that sort were all popped up. And of course, the financial need as well. But one thing that really popped out that's connected to everything was access to jobs. And how did we make sure that those job opportunities existed at levels where folks could effectively compete and get to, as Lewis mentioned before, from a mobility standpoint. So in hearing that call, we had to make it really clear what SMUD was going to be able to do to make sure that these communities were sustainable during one of our most difficult periods in our most recent history. So one, we had to make sure we maintained our commitment to the community. And this is a shared practice that we believe that can be used across the United States. We made sure that our partnerships were multi-year investments and did not have the ebbs and flows associated with the economic downturn that could potentially occur. We too want to make sure we aligned our programs with not just the future needs, but the immediate needs right now. Those multi-year partnerships allowed us to adjust language to address near-term needs, but also make sure that there was job creation opportunities and innovation opportunities that we benefited from. It's really easy to take a look at the quick patch, but how do we make sure we're creating opportunities that would be sustainable and forward thinking? We really wanted to make sure we were a partner in the education access conversation. As we've seen, distance learning has had a disproportionate effect on Black and Brown families throughout the United States. And as Lewis mentioned before, the Wi-Fi access, the digital divide is something that is really an issue that's hitting Black and Brown communities at a very strong level. So what could we do as a partner, as an electric utility partner, to help close that gap and position those individuals for success? And lastly, how can we use the technology that we had access to empower community members? Now, no matter what we do, we wanted to make sure that we create a real sustainable leadership base within communities by sharing our information, by sharing our talent. And so we wanted to leverage our existing community capacity that we had and share some of that big data that we had access to. So one of the things we're most proud of from an innovation standpoint was the development of our Sustainable Communities Resource Priorities Map. And this is an example of us providing a tool to the community. This is available on our website at smud.org/sustainablecommunities and accessible to anybody within our community to better understand what some of the needs are within the existing area that they live. The short description of this is those areas that are heightened sensitivity levels are the areas in red. Those areas in green have a lesser sensitivity level. And we took a look at 8 criteria, everything from disadvantaged community designations, opportunity zone information. We also incorporated climate change information all the way across the board to make sure that folks can see a consolidated one-stop shop to better understand the needs of their community. So everything from food access to food deserts to tree canopy information was all available so that community members could actually better understand whether there were health issues, transportation issues. We have transit line information. We have all of that in one space so we can really diagnose the problems and provide the right solutions. How we're leveraging this within our region, we're actually using this to help determine how we do our nonprofit support. We're also working with the City of Sacramento, who's actually using this in their general plan adaptation. Also using the local school district, they're leveraging this for their school facilities improvements to make sure they're prioritizing those neighborhoods that are most at need when they make their improvements. We're looking at trying to expand the usage of this map, and we've been doing trainings with community members on a regular basis so they can better understand how to use this information to better their local needs. We're really excited about this tool, and then hopefully at the end, we might be able to share it in real time. As mentioned before, we had some priorities up front, but we had to be able to be nimble and pivot. And we're really proud that these partnerships allowed us to do that. As we mentioned before, the multi-year partnerships allowed us the access to be able to make quick moves and adjust to the near-term needs and listen to our partners. A couple of examples of how we've done that and how other utilities and other organizations can do the same. With the Center for Fathers and Families, an excellent organization that works with fathers that are working with children and provides those tools. They have training classes that are face-to-face that is usually the foundation of their organization. Well, as Lewis mentioned before, as we had the shelter in place, how can we continue delivering that curriculum? Well, we were actually able to take our funding that we had in place for some expanded classes. We go back, please, for expanded classes, and made sure we were able to change the entire curriculum to be online. So now, not just during the COVID period, but all the way through, we can expand our influence of this program to anyone that has access to the internet. I'm looking forward to working with Lewis to make sure that's everyone in the Sacramento region. With Improve Your Tomorrow, another partner, we've been doing the exact same. We actually were able to shift our funding to not just expand our number of mentees, but we actually are sponsoring mentors. These are high school and college students who are responsible for pouring back into our young people. This is a program that targets young Black boys and young Hispanic boys and really empowering them educationally and making sure they go to college. They have an over 90% success rate, and we want to make sure that's expanded. We're pouring into those young men and allowing them to do their online training as well. The Promise Zone, you'll hear from Tyrone, they've been a great aggregator of all the resources in our region and helped us get access of all the programs we offer to all the Promise Zone members. So again, it's that collaboration piece that really is the key. And then lastly, as Lewis mentioned before, trying to make sure we had an active space in the workforce conversation. We have our California Mobility Center, of which SMUD is a founding partner, which really we believe will change things in our region. But we wanted to make sure as these new innovative opportunities come, that our community is positioned to be successful, to create those jobs, create those businesses in those spaces. So with the Mobility Center, as Lewis mentioned before, this is a great innovative space that will create thousands of jobs in our region. It has a potential to generate up to $1.4 billion in our region. So why is this so important to the Black community and Brown community in the Sacramento region? Is that we want to be intentional and ensure that that headquarters would be located within our existing underserved communities that primarily are residents, or where the primary residents are African American and Latinx. And that's something that's really exciting. But even more so, we want to make sure that there is a true pipeline that created the baseline skill sets to ensure that those individuals who live in that community can work in their own community in these spaces. So we're really excited about this effort. And what is most exciting about the effort is that we've really created an organic pipeline by leveraging the partnerships up front that works all the way at the grassroots level to make sure that information is shared and that individuals in our community know that these jobs exist, but not just know it, but also have the access to gain the skills to effectively compete for those opportunities. So we've been working with folks like the Black Chamber and others to get the word out about these opportunities. And that's why we're so excited about this presentation, to make sure that folks know that these jobs are available. And then we've worked with specific workforce development training organizations like the Urban League, La Familia, Asian Resources Incorporated, to ensure that the baseline job training classes that they offer are aligned with these new jobs that will be created in these new innovative sectors. We're actually going to be rolling out our first set of classes for the CMC this fall. We're extremely excited. Cannot wait to move forward in this effort. And then beyond that, we've also worked with our educational organizations and with specific programs like SAVA, Highlands Academy, to ensure that through this process, folks have not just the ability to get training at the base level, but technical training to accelerate and move their careers forward. And then lastly, we have relationships with the hiring partners beyond the CMC, like Siemens and others, that have internships and placements ready to go. Lastly, or not lastly, but we have also worked with our partners, our chamber partners, to do quarterly summits to share information, to provide training in our mapping programs, to let folks know about our existing low-income programs, our small business programs, and using this online tool to get to our businesses to let folks know what's going on. We offered up a community resilience training this last spring, and we're going to be actually doing some community capacity building in October and grant writing clinics. The idea is how we empower our communities, we do it together. And then a couple of innovative programs that specifically deal with the needs of right now. One, we've offered up a nonprofit microloan program that has really been focused on COVID recovery. It's focused on small nonprofits under 100 employees. It's up to $25,000 and really targeting those areas that you saw on the maps earlier. We're excited to roll that program up. We have over 50 applications in so far since we just launched last month. We're really excited about that program. The other is the Clean Car for All program, which is a collaborative program led by our Air District, but SMUD plays an active role, which really encourages folks to get involved in this innovative space and also improve their environmental health by trading in old gas guzzling vehicles for vouchers for and discounts for electric vehicles. We're really excited about the program as it provides an environmental health benefit, mobility benefit, and just access to new innovation as well. So in conclusion, our initiative is really based on these 5 goals: being a leader in the space, developing a measurable plan that's sustainable overall, aligning with partners like the individuals on this call, improving our collaboration across the board, and really clarifying our value proposition as a public utility. And that we would highly encourage any of you who are involved in that space to find your lane to be a part of the innovative improvements and making sure that every community is sustainable. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Jose, thank you, man. I think what you're doing over at SMUD is incredible. You know, and there's a lot of parallel efforts that are happening between our organizations. You know, with the mentorship program that SMUD has with Improve Your Tomorrow, you know, the city of Sacramento is standing up an online platform called Micro Mentor that should be ready in November. So you're able to do youth. And then with Micro Mentor, you're able to really think about 18 and up and entrepreneurs and getting into a global ecosystem for mentorship. The broadband access, you know, is something that there's a lot of people that believe broadband should be a utility, not a service. And so the fact that SMUD and what you're looking at is SMUD's role in what broadband access is, especially for underserved communities, is fantastic. And grant programs, you know, the fact that you guys are looking at training grant writers is crucial. You know, there's a lot of people that end up getting money from cities, municipalities, federal government because they can write grants. Then there's folks that don't because the grant writing isn't top notch. So the fact that you guys are stepping in to one, offer grants through your Shine program, but then have folks be able to even apply for grants like the subtle innovation grants that the city has is fantastic. I don't know if you're able to give us a quick tour of the map. But I just wanted to let people know that, and you know, all the folks that you're going to hear today is you'll hear some overlap. You'll hear some overlap around workforce development. You hear some overlap about how crucial it is for educating the community. You're going to hear all these different overlaps. So just, you know, there's a common thread that weaves through all of this, and you know, I'm excited about the opportunity with my new role to work with HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, and continue to work with the team here in Sacramento to make a tie into our community here. Up next, we're actually going to roll into our housing segment. So I would like to introduce Tyrone Roderick-Williams, who is the Deputy Executive Director at the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. His development activities have been at the forefront of neighborhood transformation efforts in Boston, Houston, Atlanta, and Sacramento. He is an industry leader in affordable housing finance, organizational management, real estate and community development, cross-sector collaborations, and organizational management. Oh, that's a mouthful. He has spent the past 25 years successfully leading multi-million-dollar, large-scale comprehensive revitalization initiatives totaling over $1 billion. Mr. Williams received his Bachelor of Architecture degree from Prairie View A&M University and a Master's in City Planning degree from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I'm speechless. Just pay attention to Mr. Tyrone Roderick-Williams. Turn it over to you, sir.
Well, I am, thank you, Louis. I am elated to be a part of this discussion and presentation about building sustainabilities in our underserved communities through access and innovation. And I'd like to spend just a little time talking to you about both, how we here in Sacramento, from a housing standpoint, are approaching the access issue and also integrating the innovation issues. Our agency, the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, is the central hub for all housing finance and all things related to community development, not only for the city of Sacramento, but for the county. And we serve surrounding counties as well and communities. So we are a multi-jurisdictional agency. And so we are not necessarily looking at approaching housing and community revitalization from a traditional bureaucratic perspective. We are entrepreneurial, we are out of the box, and we're leading the nation in many of the things that we're doing right here in Sacramento. So one of the things that we understand, like you've already heard said numerous times before, is we understand the value and the power of partnership. Everything that we do at the agency is about partnership, and we're partnering with every single agency and entity that's a part of this discussion. Part of that partnership, we've been able to set ourselves apart, one, through competing for the designation of the Promise Zone, which Jose mentioned, but it has allowed us not only to focus on housing, because we are the public housing agency for both the city and the county. We oversee the housing choice vouchers, better known as Section 8 to some, for both the city and the county. But we are much, much more than that. The Promise Zone has allowed us not only to look at sustainable housing and transit-oriented development, but to look at job training, job placement, economic development from the neighborhood businesses standpoint, health and health outcomes, and education. So it's wrapped all up together into looking at creating holistic revitalization strategies for our neighborhoods. One of the first things that we are doing here at the agency is looking at how to update our entire portfolio for public housing through the RAD program, which is the Rail Assistance Demonstration Program, so that all of our properties, no matter where they are in the city or the county, are high quality, competitive to whatever the market is offering to our residents. And so that we are able to be proud of public housing in all of its forms and be able to help our residents not only gain access to housing, but keep their housing through the programs that we offer through job training and job placement, better known as the Jobs Plus program. In addition to the public housing and elevating the quality of housing throughout our area, we're also at our agency engaged in financing multifamily housing. All of the affordable housing in the region is financed through our agency, whether it's through the federal funding, the state funding, or even local funding. So our finger is really on the pulse of what's happening. What we see is there is an unprecedented need for housing, not only here in Sacramento, but throughout the state of California and around the country. And we're looking at innovative, creative ways to leverage and layer funding and financing to maximize the opportunity for there to be access to quality multifamily housing that's rehabilitated, as well as new multifamily housing. We're also looking at the issue of accessibility through long-term affordability. One of the issues that our cities and regions are really facing is when you start building new housing, not only affordable, but market rate, when you've got opportunity zones as well as promise zones, attracting resources for development. What happens to the people who are living in those communities, and what are the market forces that begin to weigh on them? Here in Sacramento, we are very, very sensitive to how market forces can contribute to increasing the economic mix of a neighborhood, but also in some cases contributing to gentrification, which would move out or limit the opportunities for people to be in our communities who've been there a long time, but because of market forces find themselves being pushed out. And what we're committed to doing is all of the financing that we provide has a requirement of a 55-year affordability period. So when someone moves into affordable housing, they understand that that property is going to be affordable for the next 55 years. I always ask the question, where will you be in 55 years? I can tell you where we in Sacramento are going to be. We're still going to be providing quality, affordable housing to a wide range of residents, regardless of their income status or their ability to pay market rent. The other thing that we're focusing also is the single family housing. We know that across the United States, in urban communities, home ownership among people of color tends to be at the lower end of the spectrum. And we're sensitive to looking at how can we increase access to that. So one of the things that we've done throughout our entire portfolio, we've taken all of our single family homes and developed a program called Welcome Home, where those that were unoccupied and in need of rehab, we completely rehab them from the foundation to the roof, such that they look brand new. All of the systems, everything about the home are brand new, and we're offering those to individuals at 80% of the area median income or below. We have a total pool of 75 homes, and we're down to the last 10 homes in being able to provide home ownership opportunities. In addition to that, we're providing down payment and closing cost assistance, not only to those homes that we're offering through the Welcome Home program, but for any home in the region to those individuals. And we're partnering with local lenders to help those first-time home buyers understand the home buying process, not only holding their hand to the time of purchase, but also providing post-purchase counseling to ensure that they are able to maintain their homes and do that in a way that is economically aligned with their financial resources. We're also working on other programs that assist for homeowners through our mortgage certificate credit programs that allow through tax cuts and credits for individuals to qualify for homes as well. So through multifamily or single family, we're at the core of providing access. One of the things that we are also responsible for here at the agency is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which allows individuals to be able to take a voucher and go anywhere in the region, honestly, anywhere in the United States, where they can find a landlord who's willing to rent to them. We understand that having an opportunity to move any place you want to, even if it is the suburbs, is a right and an option that every individual should have. And we support that, and we provide assistance in doing that. Not only that, but we're working with our homeless population, particularly those transition age youth who are either surfing or couch surfing, as we call it, or are living with others, but whose housing is really in a tenuous situation. We're working with those youth who are homeless, at risk of becoming homeless, aging out of foster care, and on probation, to look at how we can use housing choice vouchers, plus partnering with high school education systems that help them complete their high school degree, partnering with job training and job placement agencies, and then providing wraparound services and case management to help them. And our program is called P3. We're partnering with HUD, Department of Labor, the Department of Health and Human Services. We are the first and only public housing agency using housing choice vouchers and a wraparound partnership to help those transition age youth move from housing instability to housing stability and then family self-sufficiency. The other thing that we're also focusing on are our veterans. And because of the housing choice voucher, we are making every attempt to ensure that those who have served our country are also served well through housing options and access. One of the key things that's challenging all of us right now is the impact of COVID-19 and what it has had as far as individuals losing their income or having less income and therefore being in unstable, potentially unstable housing situations because of the lack of the ability to pay rent or to pay their mortgage. And here in Sacramento, we're sensitive to that. And we are launching our new tenant protection program, which allows those individuals who have lost income due to COVID-19 related issues, where we will be working with them and their landlords to offer up to $4,000 that can go toward their back rent or toward making payments as time progresses in the future if they're not able to go back to work or if their income is significantly reduced. We're also concerned because our agency finances so many of the affordable housing apartment complexes in the region about how that's impacting our developers and their abilities to be able to make payments as a result of COVID-19 rental reductions. And so we've offered waiver of payments to our agency by any of our developers who we finance their projects. And remember, I told you, once we finance it, we're in it and ensuring affordability for 55 years. So we're not just a financer, we're a partner with them as well. And so we're looking at ways in which we can help them also through this crisis. But at the end of it all, housing affordability is a national crisis. And finding funding for housing affordability is a challenge, not only here in Sacramento and California, but across the country. Our goal and hope is that as Congress works through all of its funding options, that it will look at affordable housing as infrastructure, because it is a foundational element of a stable society and stable life. When an individual has the security of having a home, the mental pressures and stress are reduced when you know you have a safe, affordable, clean, and decent place to call home. So those are the things that we've been working on and will continue to be leaders on as we move forward, looking at access. The other component is that of innovation, and our agency is leading public housing agencies and redevelopment authorities across the country in our innovation. A lot of our area of the Promise Zone has opportunity zones, and so we're looking at ways of attracting not only affordable housing, but market rate housing as well. Understanding that with market rate housing comes the need to have community benefit agreements so that the entire community benefits from whatever is there. But we're also currently developing the largest green mixed income neighborhood, not just housing project, an entire new neighborhood here in Sacramento, complete with solar energy, water conservation, and electric charging stations. Speaking of electric charging stations, our agency was the first public housing agency in the United States to offer zero-emission vehicles to its residents and the charging stations as well. We understand that there are a lot of challenges facing our residents, and one of those is mobility. And so working with Electrify America, we've partnered, and not only in our public housing developments, but in many of our affordable housing communities and underserved neighborhoods, we've also provided charging stations and zero-emission vehicles. So you get to just go sign up for a vehicle just as you would a rental car, take care of all of the things that you need to do for you and your family, bring it back, hook it back up to the charging station, and it's there for the next person. We're about innovation. We want to be at the cutting edge. We are not the old version of the Public Housing Authority or the Redevelopment Agency. Here in Sacramento, we understand and appreciate the power of partnership and cross-sector collaboration. And we are successfully building sustainability in our underserved communities through access and innovation. I appreciate the opportunity to participate on the panel. Look forward to hearing from you as we continue to tackle some of the tough challenges through access and innovation.
Thank you so much, Tyrone. And now you guys have just heard why Tyrone Broderick Williams is the presentation. He's the man, and what he's doing around housing in Sacramento is phenomenal. He closed out with the mobility and the Electrify America stuff. And that's not necessarily something that a housing agency actually gets involved in. But the fact that he was able to partner with Electrify America and the city with that $44 million that they received as an investment is fantastic, and being able to leverage that into the community. So I want to thank him for what he's doing, because he's also been a partner for what we did at the City of Sacramento around economic gardening, helping small businesses really solve hard problems, but then also just connecting us around cybersecurity and some other federal connections that they have. So thank you, sir. It's been an honor. I want to actually now start introducing our next fabulous guest. Man, Aziza, you brought together an action-packed team here. We want to introduce Dr. Marceline Watson-Durbany. She currently serves as the Associate Vice President of Student Retention and Academic Success at Sacramento State University, providing broad oversight to over 25 plus educational equity programs and components. She is well versed in educational equity practice, program development, and in the strategic planning of retention initiatives within complex higher education structures, overseeing a vast realm of programs and initiatives that leverage the success of students. She is nationally known for her work in learning community planning and design for freshmen and transition students populations, having led such efforts for over 15 years and possesses over 25 years of educational experience. She currently chairs the Campus Educational Equity Committee, which focuses on services to underrepresented students, as well as periodically reviews educational equity programs and efforts across campus that enhance the undergraduate experience. I could go on, but let's actually hear from Dr. Marceline Watson-Durbany and what's happening at Sacramento State University around educational equity.
Thank you, Louis, for that warm introduction. I am excited to present at this conference regarding creating sustainable communities through education. There is great power in education. In the words of Dr. King, we must work to foster the goals of individuals so they can pursue their lifelong pursuits. It's also important to realize that education enables us to bridge the great divide. It's through education that we are able to empower others, that we are able to position our communities for fiscal success, and that we're able to provide training and education that leverages our communities for the future. This presentation will cover some national data trends related to equity, as well as provide a portrait of data statistics for the national population. We know that educational attainment is a driver of success and economic mobility. We also know that there are varying levels of educational attainment rates amongst various populations within the African American community. Currently within the US, there are 13.4% of individuals that are African American of the US total population. We also know that as of 2017, 2.1 million individuals actually had attained some type of formal education, be it high school all the way through graduate school. Another key factor to note is that more Blacks than ever before are attaining high school diplomas, more females are graduating. We also know that there's been a large surge in the educational attainment rates of our population. One of the things that I find really as a pride point is that as we look at the data for high school achievement, 87.9% of individuals have obtained a high school diploma, which almost matches the national average of 90%, which I think is incredible. So we're definitely closing the gap there. And I think that definitely is a pathway to ensuring that our communities are successful and doing what they need to thrive. We also know that based on the data points that you cite, multiracial African Americans actually make up 14%, so the numbers can be even higher if you consider mixed race status. This chart depicts the educational attainment rates by gender, and I talked a little bit about that before, but you can see from the graph here, the bar chart, that 9% of females that are African American had attained a graduate degree. And again, more Blacks than ever before earning high school diplomas. Females are leading the way, and there's really been an overall surge in achievements across segments. One of the things that we've done at Sacramento State is we've put in systems and programs to ensure that our students are successful in earning their degree in a timely fashion. We have a Finish in 4 program, which enables students to finish quicker, which means they come out with less debt if they've taken out loans. And we also provide comprehensive advising and support services to make sure that students in the region, once they come to Sacramento State, are able to learn in an environment in which they're very well supported. So from this graph, you can see that 87.9% of African Americans had achieved a high school diploma, as discussed before, which is on par with the national average of 90%. Research work completed by the U.S. Census Bureau reveals that dropout rates are declining, and we see that more and more students are actually enrolling in college. We also see that the average enrollment for young adults increased from 26% to 41%. At the same time, the proportion of Black young adults in college more than doubled, rising from 15% to 38%. So overall, as we look at college attainment, 26% of African American students or African Americans ages 25 and older from 1940 to 2019 had actually earned their baccalaureate degree. Of those going on to college, within the 6-year mark, over half had graduated in comparison to roughly 69 or 70% of their Caucasian counterparts. I think it's important to look at some of the data that's being put out by the Business Insider to really inform this dialogue of sustainability through education. We can actually see the trends here in college attainment have been steadily increasing for African Americans. And you can see that this has been over a long period of time. So we're clearly making progress as we educate our communities and as we walk hand in hand to help our growing youth and college age populations and adult populations through education. We're making an impact. One important marker to note is this whole concept of intergenerational educational mobility. And what this really pertains to is the fact that if an African American family, if the parents have only possessed a high school diploma, only 15% of those students graduated from college. So being the first in your family is a unique characteristic that often comes with barriers. And one of the things that we've done that's very special at Sacramento State is we've developed the First Generation Institute, which is designed to inform and educate our first generation students about what it takes to be successful in college. We also have a parents and families program that works hand in hand with parents to provide them with tools and resources so they know how to help their scholars while they're in college. Another thing that's really critical to note is that race and income are definitely tied. So we can actually see from this chart that our income levels have been relatively stable for the African American community and that we're still lagging behind. But I believe with increased empowerment, education, innovation, and access that will continue to improve in this area. Unemployment rates. From this chart, we can see that unemployment rates for African Americans who appear in the darker blue color, that they have had higher unemployment rates in comparison to their counterparts. And this has been consistent over time. So how does possessing an education stem the tide of what the data shows in terms of earning power, creating more sustainability? In 2017, on average, a person with an advanced degree earned 3 times more than a high school dropout. So going to college pays, in particular, if you pursue an advanced degree. Wage gaps still persist in economic compensation levels, and we have to continue to strive towards pay equity. But this is definitely something that we're working toward in the region as we equip our youth, our communities to empower themselves for more. This chart is very important because it really highlights at all levels, from less than a high school diploma all the way through an advanced degree, income levels in terms of average hourly wages by race and education based on data in 2015. Comparing their counterparts in African Americans, we see that at the bottom of the chart, the average hourly rate was roughly $39, and then $33 for African Americans. So we still have a ways to go. Based on the trends in this chart, we also see that those individuals that have a bachelor's degree are more likely to have jobs. So even in the recession, even in downturns, and education truly does pay off. So from the data presented by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, we see that having an education does play a role. We have a role to play as a community, and I think a college education is one way to bridge that great divide. So summary point, the more we are educated, the more we are likely to be employed, the more likely we are to sustain our communities. You hear it often, education is your ticket to the future. I always remember that education is the one thing that no one can take away from you. Education is empowerment. Key questions for you. How do communities address social, economic, and educational inequities? How do we harness community resources, leaders, policy, and practice to make change? How do we educate the most vulnerable among us? And how do we ensure lifelong learning? That is a very key portion of sustaining our communities. And how do we use education as a tool for economic mobility? We have to create conditions for learning in the African American community by elevating our children and our youth, our K through 12 sector. We've done this work at Sacramento State by creating the MLK Center, in which we provide an oasis for African American students on the campus, serving 2,100 African American students that attend there, providing them with a sense of belonging, resources, and support. We also have to instill a passion for learning that is both personally customized and culturally relevant. We also must ensure quality and equity in the classroom that spans from our teaching to our curriculum to our accountability systems to ensure that no one is left behind, everyone succeeds, everyone is able to attain the education that they strive for. And along the way, we must recognize and we must reward students for their achievements. So annually, each year, we bring together all underserved, underrepresented students from across the university with their parents, their guardians, and their friends to celebrate the rich accomplishments on our campus, because we want our underserved populations to know that we value all the hard work they're doing in the classroom. We must uplift those that struggle, and we also must solidify their educational niche and experiences, realizing that everyone learns differently. And we also must increase high school completion rates and educate families on how to navigate the higher education space. So one of the things that we've done for all Brown and Black communities is we provide application workshops to help students apply to school so they know exactly what to do. We have to create a pipeline of access. We have to establish training and career-ready programs so students can be successful. So what does equity mean? It means that every community member has an equal chance at being successful within their community. It must be reflected in our laws, it must be an institutional funding priority, and it must be embraced by all communities. All of us play a role. As I conclude, we are all in this together. Sacramento State has done a wonderful job through the Educational Opportunity Program, which provides access, through the Degrees Project, which provides innovation, and through a lot of initiatives for first-generation college students to be successful. We must realize that we're all interdependent and we all depend on one another. I want to thank you for your time and attention to this presentation, and I'm going to turn it back over to Louis.
Thank you so much, Dr. DeBenny. This is some great stuff coming out of Sac State University. Just amazing programs and leadership that you're providing to the students there. I look forward to working with you and Dr. Nelson to make things happen and develop that pipeline and get some students career ready for entering in the private sector or doing policy work here in Sacramento and beyond. So with that, I think we need to move on to another crucial topic, and that's mental health. This one strikes a particular chord, especially with everything that's been happening in the world today, especially in the US, to Black men across the country. You see a lot of movement, and it's having a huge impact on a lot of us watching this and taking part in this conference. So with that, I want to introduce Dr. John Boyd. He is Sutter Health CEO for Mental Health Services. He has an extensive background in healthcare administration, including mental health. John has been appointed as a commissioner by Governor Jerry Brown for the State of California Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission, and currently serves in that commission under Governor Newsom. John currently serves also on the board of Mental Health America and the Steinberg Institute. John serves on the advisory council for the Movement for Global Mental Health, the Wellbeing Trust, and Mental Health America of Hawaii. He established and chairs the National Behavioral Health Council with over 40 health system participants. Dr. Boyd has served in other appointed capacities, including City of Sacramento Planning Commissioner. He earned his MHA from University of Southern California and his doctorate from CSPP, and completed his APA accredited pre-doctoral internship at University of California Davis Children's Hospital Care Diagnostic and Treatment Center. I could go on about this man too, but just understand that what he says you need to listen to. So with that, I turn it over to Dr. John Boyd.
Thank you so much. It is an honor and a privilege to be a part of this incredible panel of individuals that we have heard from. And I just want to thank the Black Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity and want to thank Aziza specifically. It's an honor and a privilege to talk so fully and completely about this work related to mental health and addiction care and suicide prevention that we all recognize has never taken the global stage in terms of importance like it has in the current environment. So really, again, want to thank you all. I would like to start by addressing broad issues that are impacting the field. These broad issues will not be new to some of you, but to others, they absolutely might be. And so, again, I want to thank you for your time and attention. And next slide, please. It is very clear that we need increased funding for mental health, addiction, and suicide prevention. This needs to be provided to support access to care, as well as strengthen our community programs at the neighborhood and local level, and to ensure that we have embedded mental health resources in our schools, in our court systems, as well as the workplace. As a side mention, Canada is the first nation in the world that has absolutely developed voluntary workplace mental health standards. We teach people how to lift boxes in the workplace without being injured, but we do not oftentimes teach people how to remain psychologically safe. And yet that is where many of us spend our most time, even if it is now in this virtual world. We must eliminate stigma. Silence kills. Silence oftentimes keeps people from talking openly around mental health challenges, thoughts of suicide, or addiction challenges. And this secrecy can sometimes be maintained with their own healthcare provider. And we need to work hard to eliminate that by sharing our own stories and our own challenges. And there is increasing focus on doing that as a community. We must change the narrative as it relates to mental health challenges, addiction, and suicide. The reality is that those areas know no boundaries. They impact us all. They affect us all. And we need to step up with appropriate training and support and share our own stories so that others feel free to do the same. Social justice issues, including systemic racism, must be addressed at all levels. The profound impact this has on mental health when one individual sees another discriminated against, including specifically if that individual looks like me, is profound. We must address those issues. Food, housing, and social connection is essential to mental health. As you heard from many of my colleagues earlier that are addressing housing challenges and partnering within the community and providing education and food support. It is impossible to maintain one's mental health without housing, food, and appropriate support and connectivity. We must continue to stand up for parity, ensuring that mental health is covered along with addiction care, just like any other health condition, without exception. And we must absolutely continue to support those individuals in the community, including religious institutions that are on the front line, providing this life-saving support to address mental health, addiction, and suicide prevention. In 2018, which are the most current numbers that we currently have, 5.9 million Black adults had a mental health substance use disorder. And we know that that is underreported, just like just about any number related to mental health, addiction care, and suicide. With that said, what is true across the board is that there remain significant gaps in terms of individuals being able to access appropriate care, treatment, and support. On average, it can take someone up to 7 years to recognize and seek help for a mental health challenge and support. And we have to close that gap. And we need to ensure that we have effective evidence-based treatment for all of us that may have a mental health challenge, addiction care need, or suicide prevention support. I want to talk briefly about an area that has enjoyed so much coverage, and it is unfortunately significantly painful for families and communities and neighborhoods all around the country. And the same is true here in Sacramento, California. Opioid addiction has devastated the lives of individuals and families and communities. The reality is that Black people are 5 times higher, though, not to complete addiction treatment compared to Caucasian people. And we need to ask ourselves why. We know that there are significant gaps in trainings of healthcare professionals, including mental health professionals, that are targeted at improving their ability to offer appropriate clinical care that takes into context the ethnic diversity of all communities, and specifically Black people. It matters what type of signage we have on the walls. It matters the way we design our care settings. It matters, and inclusivity must absolutely be built in every way through programming and support in clinical environments. As noted on this slide, Black people have the highest increase in overdose death rate for opioid deaths involving synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Again, you can turn on just about any news or media app, and there will be some stories related to this impact. And without effective interventions at the community level, targeted appropriately for individuals, including specifically Black people, it will be impossible to bend this curve. I want to highlight that we must all champion community conversations regarding compassion and understanding and the reality that treatment is essential. It is important that we talk about trauma specifically as it relates to Black people and Black Americans, as racism has been so paramount. The one thing that I want to highlight on this is that when one individual suffers at the hands of discrimination, prejudice, and violence, then all individuals from that community also suffer, regardless of how far removed they may be when they witness that occurring via media or a news channel. I'm not implying that the local community impacts aren't significantly felt. I'm simply pointing out that the cascade and the ripple effect that impacts our psyche if we are a part of that community is significant and cannot be underreported or undervalued. I talked briefly in my opening as it relates to stigma and the need to eliminate stigma. That is the component of mental health care that has kept so many people from accessing care and accessing treatment. It's important to realize the statistics that are reflected on this slide, and it is important to acknowledge the individual roles and responsibilities of different members of the community to ensure that we are not accidentally, unintentionally promoting stigma as it relates to our young people, as it relates to our community conversations, and as it relates to conversations that we may have at schools or over the dinner table. It is important that we frame positively the reality that all of us at one point will need mental health support, addiction support, as well as suicide prevention support, and to begin to openly have those conversations without any labels or without any judgments. Oftentimes, unfortunately, there are still jokes that get told as it relates to individuals with mental health challenges or addiction needs and support, or even that die by suicide. And those have a profound negative effect across the board. And we must stop those conversations and instead talk in a very strength-based way the importance of openly reaching out for help and support. As mentioned briefly, the value and the importance of developing multicultural awareness is a basic responsibility that all healthcare providers have. We need increased cultural sensitivity training. We need increased cultural knowledge at the provider level. And we need to hold providers accountable to demonstrate their ability as it relates to cultural skills. I wanted to talk briefly about our responsibility as a community, as business owners, as healthcare providers, as individuals that work in a variety of settings to protect the future of our youth. It is a startling number that suicide rates are 2 times higher in Black children than white children under the age of 13. That is a statistic that oftentimes is not represented, talked about, or known. And we yet in many places do not have effective intervention programs that are absolutely designed to help stop this statistic. We need to continue as a community to safeguard our young children. We do that by taking the time to listen to them, to know them, to ensure that we are providing to them in ways that are age appropriate information as it relates to mental health, addiction, and suicide prevention. And I am confident that if we do that, and if we ensure that we have the right mental health professionals in our school settings, we can begin to turn this around. I wanted to talk briefly about female mental health, specifically in the Black community. I wanted to highlight a few areas that deserve focused conversation briefly. And that's the reality that certain traumas and stereotypes particularly affect Black women. 40% experience domestic abuse in their lifetime. And that is just one significant statistic. Suicidal ideation and attempts are higher amongst Black women in grades 9 through 12. And it's important to note, as I mentioned earlier, the value of investing in the community front line, which includes religious institutions, that a significant number of Black women turn to religious coping mechanisms to help support during these times. And we must know that, understand that, and invest in that community. I wanted to talk briefly about the sources of innovation and access that are available from a national perspective. I will not take time to read these individually, but I would like to go ahead and give a special mention to the Morehouse School of Medicine, the Cork Institute. They are doing phenomenal work in training healthcare providers, including physicians, on culturally appropriate care, and they are championing the care that all of us need that represent and are a part of populations of diversity and are doing incredible work. I also want to highlight the Black Psychiatrists of America and the work of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I want to talk briefly as we close about some of the incredible work that is happening locally here in Sacramento, California. I want to start by recognizing the work that is happening from Dr. Stephen Lockhart out of Sutter Health as it relates to health disparities, and the leadership of Sutter Health CEO, Sarah Krebens, that are doing a phenomenal job promoting the importance and delivering clear value and goals as it relates to health disparities. I also want to mention that in California, we have a unique funding mechanism called Prop 63. It's a 1% tax on everybody that makes over $1 million. All of it goes to mental health to support many of the times community-based programming. That revenue is now approximately $2.6 billion a year. I want to talk briefly about an organization called Cities Rise in Sacramento, which links youth as it relates to mental health conversations with other youth around the world, including one of our partnering cities, Nairobi in Africa. And they are actively involved in the work of the city to champion their own perspective and their own voices as it relates to mental health, addiction care, and suicide prevention. I lastly want to say that we have a unique configuration here in Sacramento where we have the Steinberg Institute focused entirely on state policy, advocacy, and legislation. We have partnered in the same physical footprint, the Kennedy Forum on the West Coast, which focuses entirely on the importance of parity and championing a legislation and policy that helps us move the dial there. And to that end, I again want to thank you, the Black Chamber of Commerce, and my esteemed colleagues, and Aziza, you of course, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boyd. And he presented some sobering stats, but I hope you were listening, because this is crucial for our community, that we actually start talking about mental health and removing the stigma. I know myself personally, just to personalize it for a second, I had to actually start writing to let some of the emotions and feelings out of my head. And in the workplace, we're always expected to just continue working and make things happen. And that's, it's not a reality. So I encourage you to turn to a colleague, turn to a family member, turn to a church, start talking about what's going on in your head, start the conversation at home, make sure that your kids are safe, your partners are safe, and go on from there. I want to thank everybody that's been part of this panel. I want to thank Aziza again for the invitation, and I truly look forward to what's next as I become part of the NVIDIA family. I got a lot of work to do with all of you, and all of you watching, hit me up. I'll be around. Aziza, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you all so much for participating this year with Prosper, the program that the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce started, as I said earlier, 9 years ago. I want to particularly say thanks, of course, to all of you who presented today. The information was invaluable, and I'm really looking forward to it being seen all over the world. And more than anything, I need to take this opportunity to thank SMUD, our major sponsor for this event, and the leadership at SMUD that absolutely understands how important building sustainability is. From the top, with their general manager, Arlen Orchard, with Jose's initial direct report, Nicole Howard, and then Jose, who is like my left arm, my right arm, my brain. I couldn't do this without his help and support, just as I couldn't do it without any of yours. I'd be remiss if I didn't also thank the board chair for the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce, who's sitting here somewhere in the background, Lori Clark. You can show your head now if you'd like to, just so that we can all thank you for the support and the leadership you've provided during this presentation. And again, to the to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation for allowing us this opportunity to present this very, very riveting and information and understanding the importance of building sustainability in our underrepresented communities. Thank you all so much, and have a great rest of the conference.